Sometimes we get so busy, we forget what God called us to do. We get so wrapped up in what we think is important, we lose sight of what really is important. I want to ask you a question. Are you a giant? Are you a giant? You can be a giant and be a maintenance guy. You can be a giant and be the head man. You can be a giant. But I want to give you a test. I want to ask you a question. I want to give you a giant test. What's the characteristics of a giant? Take this test with me. Always protective. Not of your turf. Always protective of others. Starting with your woman, your husband, your children, then your ministry. Don't ever get that messed up. God never calls you to sacrifice your family at the altar of ministry. Never. Number 2, sees what others cannot. A giant sees things other people don't see. A giant looks at a little boy and says, that boy's got potential. Someone pretending to be a giant is always blind. Unselfish. You show me a godly giant, I'll show you the most unselfish heart you will ever find. If you're selfish, you're not walking with the King. Because you know what? The King that I've read about and the King I've heard about and the King that called me to go get 2,000 kids. Don't be selfish. Always points to Christ. Man, if I met your boy, who's the godliest man you know? Would he name you? If he named somebody else, sir, you better go home and take care of business. Nowhere in the Bible does it tell your pastor to lead your children to Jesus Christ. Nowhere. It says fathers. You know something else, dads, husbands? You know a scary thing? We are spiritually accountable for the depth and width of our wives' spiritualness. We're accountable. If your woman is not a godly woman, you better go look in the mirror and ask God to change you. Quit asking Him to change her, because it starts with you. Consistent. Now, for some of us, consistent's got a two-edged sword. You're consistent in da-da-da-da-da, but you're also consistent in those negative things that are sin. You got to work on that one. Solid foundation. Every giant I've ever seen has got their feet solidly on the ground. You can't knock them down. And if you happen to knock them down, they get up real quick. Because you know what? Giants weren't made to lay down. There's a ripple effect to their life at all times. Ripple effect. Starting with your own children. Your son's 16 years old and he's running with the wrong crowd, you know it. And on Friday night, he's out drinking with his buddies and you're letting it go by. Can I tell you something? You're not accountable for somebody else's kid, but you are accountable for your own. A giant always encourages others to stand on their shoulders. Always. If you hadn't got anybody climbing up your side to stand on your shoulders, maybe they don't see enough giant to want to climb. Chronological time of knowing Christ does not determine if you're a giant or not. I had a 12-year-old boy stand in front of me. I said, how you doing? He said, fine. I said, tell me about your family. He said, well, they used to beat my little brother. I said, really? He said, yeah, he's 7. And I said, is that him? He said, yes, sir, that's him. They were 12 and 7-year-old set of brothers. And I said, how'd they do it? He said, well, they make me go get him and they make me hold him down. And he said, and I could say, that bothers you, doesn't it? He said, yeah. I said, how'd you hold him down? He said, I laid on top of him. I said, let me see your back. It's okay. I said, let me see your back. And he turned around and he pulled his shirt up. And he was scar tissue from his waist to his shoulder blades. If you hadn't got any scars, you're not a giant. When you and I get to the gates of heaven, what I hope Jesus finds is we're standing there. We're not exhausted, but we're tired. And our hand has never let go of the sword. And it's got cuts on it and chinks. And Jesus looks at it, and then he looks at our helmet, and it's got dents in it where you've been beaten up sometimes. And then he looks at your shield, and there's steel missiles that are flaming in it. How cool to stand before the King. And you're beat up, and you're bloody, and you're tired, but behind you is maybe the next Billy Graham or the next whatever God has planned. There's going to be a guy standing next to you. He's got the good-looking jacket on. His helmet's not going to have a dent in it. He's got the sword up here and he's looking good, and that shield is shiny and polished. Because see, he was worried more about looking good versus there being a trail of rippling behind him. We take kids 6 to 18 that are orphaned, abused, neglected, and homeless. But can I tell you something about your kids? There's 2 things your kids must know. They must know you love them and believe in them. I didn't say believe them. I said believe in them. There's 2 things your child will have a hard time forgiving you for. No discipline and not trying when you knew better. You can't compromise. You can't. Your child, if you're worried more about him liking you than respecting you, you're the fool. Because let me assure you, they may like you now, and you might be the cool parent, you may be the one that everybody, but you know in your heart your kid doesn't respect you. You know. If you've got it, you can't hide it. If you don't have it, you can't fake it. Kids get their character decision-making skills between the ages of 1 and 6. At the age of 10, your child gets reasoning skills. At the age of 12, they get figuring out skills. They figure it out. Most people dump their kids at the ranch around the age of 12. Because see, the kid knows the daddy's a liar. They also know his dad watches inappropriate things on TV. It's important. We're raising a generation of young boys that don't know what real manhood is. We're raising a generation of girls who don't know what a real man looks like. Moms and dad, it is your job to help your daughter have a filter. And if she's 18, getting ready to go off to college, one of 5 things is going to get her. Work ethic, time management, money management, questioning of faith, compromise in morals. One or a combination of those 5 is going to get your kid. You got to pack their bags for the journey. Giants let others climb up on their shoulders. Every child that's ever lived with us has heard the same 4 promises. I'm not real smart. I love you. I will never lie to you. I'll stick with you till you're grown. And there's boundaries. Don't cross them. As a parent, emotional support, truth, security, discipline. If you got those 4, you will raise a thoroughbred. 2 weeks ago, a little boy named Kyron, 11 years old, was at the ranch. I had my meeting with him, and I had told him, I love you, never lie to you, stick with your boundaries, don't cross them. And I said, you belong to me. You're mine now. He was in the van, headed to the boys' ranch for his new home. He looked at the boys, and they were talking about mom and pop. And he said, who's that? I said, that's mom and dad. 11-year-old boy said, you mean I get to have a mom and a dad? He had never had one. You go be a giant of a mom. You go be a giant of a dad. You be a giant of a mate, because we serve a great King. It's been a joy. Thank you so much for letting me be with you guys.